Hi, I'm Beth O'Leary, author of The Flat Share and The Switch, and I'm here to answer some of the lovely questions that you sent my way. I'm going to dive straight in because there's a big list and they're all brilliant. So our first question is from Maria. She says, the two main characters in The Switch live very different lives. If you had to choose, would you go for the big city or the countryside? So for me, it's countryside all the way. I'm definitely not a city girl. I lived in London for a little while, but it just didn't suit me. Like I never felt like I switched off there, and now I live in the middle of the countryside, in the middle of nowhere. I absolutely love it. Like go out every day to walk the dog through the woods, and have like beautiful view from my desk of the trees. So yeah, this is definitely more me. Second question from Wesley. Sorry, by the way, if I pronounce anybody's names wrong. I'm gonna give it a try, but I'm sorry if I get it wrong. So your characters seem so real. Oh, thank you. Their attitudes, their personalities, everything they go through. Did you take characteristics or events from your own life or from someone else's life to create them? So all my characters have a little bit of me in them, I think. Lena has my perfectionism. Like her, I'm really hard on myself when I make a mistake. And I'm an introvert like Leon. But it's kind of hard to say exactly where my characters come from. I never kind of consciously take things from people I know or from myself. I never think like, oh, I'm going to make sure that Eileen has a similar sense of humour to my grandma or anything like that. But they often do. Like I think they kind of just, those things work their way into the characters. And yeah, Eileen does have a very similar sense of humour to my grandma. Titania asks, if you could choose any person to share a flat with, who would it be? Well, I actually just got married a few weeks ago, so I would say the person I'd most like to share a flat with right now is my new husband, and we're very lucky to live together. But if he was for some reason not available, then I think I'd go for like Nigella Lawson, who's a chef. So somebody who's a really, really good cook, because you'd get like really nice dinners, and also I love cooking and baking, so she could, you know, teach me a few things. Deborah asks, I found Leon's brother Richie very lovely. Is there any possibility we could get a short story or a spin-off with him? Oh, I'm so glad you're a Richie fan. I have a real soft spot for him too. I mean, I'd never say never on another Richie story, but there's nothing in the works now, but you never know. Like sometimes ideas just pop into my head. I'd have to find a story that I really wanted to tell. You know, I think that would have to be my starting point rather than thinking I want to write about Richie again, if that makes sense. So Gabrielle, which book did you most enjoy writing? The Flat Share. So I wrote that book just for fun really, and for escapism, and in the hope that maybe one day someone might want to read it. And the Switch I wrote, you know, knowing that there were loads of lovely readers out there waiting for it who'd enjoyed the Flat Share. So at times that kind of did feel like a pressure, and I got up in my own head a little bit whilst I was writing the Switch. And you know, I think I didn't want to let you guys down. But I think in a way, because of that, I'm actually kind of prouder of the Switch than the Flat Share, because the Switch was a hard book to write. I did find it tough at times, and actually I worked really hard and gave a lot to that book, and now I absolutely love it. I love it to pieces. So yeah, I'd say the Flat Share was an easier book to write, but I definitely don't have a favourite. Gabrielle says, if you could be a character from one of your books, who would you be? This is a really tough question. I think I'm going to say Tiffy from the Flat Share, but maybe at the end of the book, because she goes through a lot of tough times before that point. But I love how kind of positive and optimistic she is. Like even the first line of the book, she says like, you know, that she sees the positives in the idea of being desperate in a situation. I love that about her. And also, I wish I was crafty like she is. Like I'm no use at things like sewing and knitting. So I'd like to have those skills of hers too. Letitia says, Hey Beth, I loved your books. You're awesome. Ah, thank you. I would like to know if the switch was inspired by your own life. Would you like to switch places with anyone? So I guess in a way I kind of did go through a switch, a bit like Lena, in that I went from a busy London job to living in the countryside as an author, which is obviously a very quiet existence. But for me, that was 100% a choice that I wanted to make. You know, that was a dream for me. So unlike Lena, I knew that was what I wanted from the get-go. Marina says, hi Beth, your stories are adorable. Oh, thank you. They remind me of amazing romantic comedies that warm our hearts and leave us wanting to come back to the characters. Oh, that's really kind. Are you a fan of romantic comedies? Do you have a favourite one? Yes, probably no surprise. I am a huge romantic comedy fan. It's like my favourite thing to read. So in terms of books, it's really hard to pick a favourite, but I do love Sophie Kinsella's The Undomestic Goddess. It was one of the first rom-coms that I ever read, I think, really, and it just swept me away, and it gave me that like amazing warm fuzzy feeling in your belly that like a really, really good rom-com does. But in case you mean films, because sometimes people mean films when they say rom-coms, I'm going to say a really unoriginal one and say Love Actually. And I know that's like it's sort of such a famous film that everyone says, but for me it's like epitomizes Christmas, because my husband's family, they watch it every year, and it's kind of like a tradition, and I really associate it with like curling up on their sofa in front of the fire and watching it with him and their family. So yeah, that one's got a special place in my heart. Bruna says, first I would like to say that both me and my mum loved your 2 books and your writing. Oh, thank you to you and your mum. My question's about the switch. I saw that you came up with the idea for the book while you were at your grandma's house. Now that you've finished writing it, what do you expect your life will look like when you're Grandma Eileen's age? Did she change the way you see your own future? Wow, that's such an interesting question. I did find it really kind of empowering writing Eileen. Whilst I was working on the switch, I was also I was volunteering with a lunch club in my local area for isolated older people who kind of didn't see anyone, a little bit like the Shoreditch's club in the switch, and you know, that was part of what drew me to writing an older character, being with those people every week, and you know, they really inspired me, and writing Eileen kind of, I think, gave me a different perspective on age, you know, and I asked lots of people lots of questions to help me write it, and it was just really interesting to think about, you know, I guess like when I'm that age, what do I want to look back and what kind of attitude do I want to have? I think that's one of the things that the ladies of the lunch club really taught me, is that having a positive attitude makes a huge amount of difference, especially when, you know, you're perhaps not able to get around as much or do as much. And yeah, they just kind of gave me perspective, I guess. I definitely would love to be like Eileen when I'm older. She's kind of bold and funny and brave, and those are all things that I would love to be. Jessica says, to you, what is the most difficult part of writing? I think for me it's around 30,000 words, a very precise answer, but that's kind of far enough into a novel that the like buzzy, shiny feeling that you get at the beginning when you're like, oh my god, I've had an idea and it's the best idea anyone's ever had. That's sort of worn off by about 30,000 words, and you're really doing it, and you're kind of seeing like, there's so many words to go and I'm not sure I can do this, and that's always the point where I kind of flag and kind of second guess myself and wonder if it's going to be good enough. So yeah, usually once I'm over the halfway mark, it's kind of like, you know, pushing it down the hill. Like I know where I'm going and it's like flying, but yeah, that first sort of that between 30 and 50,000 words is the tough bit. So this is our last question, from Alan Claudio. The switch is full of life and very well written. Oh, thank you. Was it difficult to write another romance after the great hit that was your first one? So there's 2 questions here actually. They've also said, should we look forward to anything new? So to your first question, Yes, it was really tough, as I've said, writing my second book, and I did put a lot of pressure on myself, and in the end I actually stopped looking at reviews for the Flatshare, because even when people were saying really, really kind things about my first book, I'd think, oh my god, I haven't done that in the second book, and they're not going to like it, and I had to just kind of put all that aside and just write a story that I loved and that I fell in love with in the end. And yes, in terms of whether you should look out for something new, I have got a new book on the way, which is called The Road Trip, and I'll give you a little hint and tell you that it starts with two exes crashing into one another's cars. And this, by contrast to The Switch, was an absolute dream to write. It just came in a rush, like I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was sort of obsessed with it. The idea just wouldn't leave me alone. So yeah, I kind of haven't been consumed by a story like that before. So yeah, I hope you guys are going to love it. Yeah, I'm really excited for you to read it. But anyway, that is it from me. Thank you for the amazing questions. This has been really fun. And yeah, look after yourselves and happy reading. Bye.